So today we're going to be talking about, if we go into, well, hang on, we're going to get started here. Again, if you have any questions, pop the chat box. If you do have a microphone, you can unmute. And then I'll try to make sure I stop and ask the Q&A stuff after each topic. And I think we'll be able to get to everybody's questions. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to. All right, so today we're going to be covering, of course, the recent changes to Pro Fund Accounting. Then I'm going to cover the year beginning procedures, mainly the payroll and the equipment. We call it equipment rental update, but basically the new rates from MDOT. And then I'm going to cover a pretty lengthy tutorial on how to run our Pro Fund Accounting security. Our next webinar will be the 7th at 10 a.m. Of course, same Zoom link. And I'm believing by then we should have the release of our new payroll kiosk system. If not released by then, really, really close. Right now, we've been spending time getting the hardware at our data center configured and set up to support the increased lots of people typing, lots of increased traffic. That's better for the increased traffic and to enhance the reliability of the website so that it doesn't, we don't have that much downtime. But it's still a work in progress, but we'll get there. Okay, so no further ado, let's switch over to, I don't have it running. Okay, so let's go to our first, take a peek at what we've changed. All right. So of course we released the W-2 and W-3 tax forms for the year end 2021. I'm assuming I don't need to show those. We've updated the tax summary reports to process the FICA max threshold correctly. This last year looked like the FICA max wasn't being correctly specified. So if somebody did go over, we were still reporting them as having taxes. Then we updated the time card audit and entry per, I believe it was several of you have asked for different pieces. And then we put in the new group trees for the parameters and layouts so that it looks nicer. Then in payroll, we did again the tax tables for 2022, got those out and up to you guys. Wisconsin had a new formula for doing state taxes that we implemented. And then of course, with that, you always still have to have the old one in there. So if you're calculating a 2021 tax, we still have the old formula, and then of course the new formula for anything in year 2022. We updated the tree on the right side of the time card permissions form to use a better control that's a little more stable. It should help a lot. And we had to remove a pay types, so we got to be careful because this is kind of for the half for the new, half for the old, but the old will respond sort of incorrectly. So, I'll cover that next month when we talk about the newer system. Finally, we fixed general ledger posts, so it didn't require extra tabbing to go to the save button when posting. And we updated the commit and delete button alls to clear all the visuals from the journal when it's completed. So before, I guess the delete all and that didn't quite clear everything off the form. And then we have two that we're going to be releasing today. Just to update, we added a merge function to the vendors, so you can merge two vendors together. And then we added an update to the security system to do a proper clearing of the security, which we'll cover that later today. All right, so the next thing we're going to cover is the things that we need to do to start a new payroll. It's not too much. We need to come into payroll year start dates and put in your new year's starting date. To do that, you'll come in here and you can click on new. And when you do, it's kind of funky because you don't really see it, but it's at the bottom. So it puts in 2023 because it already found 2022. And then you go ahead and put in the year start date for that. So in this case, it would be 28th of the 2022. Now, what this does is it kind of sets up a place for us to know earnings. When do the earnings start for the new year? So sometimes you have payrolls where the earnings end at like the 15th or the 16th of the month, and the new earnings start at the 22. This just gives us a way to know where those earnings start. So make sure you have the 2022 earnings set correctly. And if you don't have it set, we assume the earnings start on 1/1 of 2022. So again, if they're blank, then we're assuming your earnings start on the 1/1, which almost nobody's really do. Okay, any questions about set up payroll year dates? The only thing that's kind of weird is when you click on new, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to get to the new item. Okay, the next part we have to do is go to equipment, and we will have the equipment rental update. It's a weird name, but it's kind of what we called it way back when, so we haven't changed it. This brings in the new MDOT table. So you want to run this after you've had every time card entry posted for 2021 completed, including that you've imported from the time card import system. So not that they keyed it, but you've imported, because it's during the import that we assign the rates. During the keying, we just say, hey, we don't capture the rate during the keying of it. We only process the rate for the during the import cycle. So once everybody has all of their 2021 keyed in, then you can do that. And you want to make sure that you go ahead and then apply this before you do any 2022 payroll entries. So we pick course year 2022. It's a little different here, as if you're going to update all the equipment by percentage, and let's say you have to go down by 10%. Going down, when you actually put in a negative 10%, that will go down. And we do now allow 4 characters where before we just had 2, but you can go down by 4%. That would be to increase by 10%. You click on that. To decrease, it's a negative. Same thing with the state adjustment. Negative to go 90, that's 10. So this is the amount you're increasing by, not the amount you physically want in there. And then you just put those 2 in, and you can just click on done, and it will go through. So I'm going to leave mine blank because I'm just going to take what you have it. And it just basically goes through and updates all of your equipment. So now if you go into equipment maintenance, the rate for any piece of equipment for the state code, you'll see the new rate. Okay. The other thing about equipment rental rate is some people don't do the whole thing, but there's only like 2 or 3 that they do. So if you're going to do it all by hand, you type in the state code here, and then you give us the new rate that you want for the regular, and then the new state rate. Now that's one code at a time, so that it's much more. But sometimes it's like this. I've seen places where they take everything from the normal one, but there's 2 pieces there's 2 kinds of equipment codes that they need to have a little bit more money. So they just update those two codes. So they first run it, get the whole thing updated for everything else, and then they run the two codes that they need to make an adjustment to. And then when you're done, there is a final report that we do, which is reports. I believe we're supposed to send I think it's the equipment questionnaire report that we send back to MDOT so that they can see that you've done it. I'm not going to run it because I don't really have a whole lot on my test database. So, but you get the idea. Those are the two things that we need to do before we start a new year and start keying in, entries for the piece. Now, yes, if you had to go back to 2021 in December and fix something, you have to be aware that the new rates are going to get applied if you change or fix something in 2021 after you've ran equipment rental update. So just be aware that once this is set, going backwards in time, anytime you make an adjustment, it's likely the rates will get changed as well.
What happens if I do have to go back and fix something?
Well, it depends. You get a lot of depends on what you're fixing. But if you have to go and add any kind of equipment to somebody, then the new rates will be, of course, used when we add that piece of equipment to a ton card. If you go back and just modify, let's say they posted to the wrong account number, the equipment rates do not automatically update on that kind of a change. So just be aware that if you're adding something to a transaction, to a payroll transaction, then be aware that the new rates are applied whenever you're doing an add. But if you just go and modify the hours, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, if you modify the number of hours on it, then it will use the new equipment as well, the new rate. It'll pull it in. But if you're just changing, like I said, there's lots of different kind of fixes you could be doing. Just the best answer is kind of be aware of what the current one is before you start making your changes, and then just verifying that after you make the change, it's the correct rate that's being used. And you can change, Payroll Post lets you change the which rate it's using at the very bottom when you're inside the equipment section in Payroll Post. You can change what rate it's used. All right. So finally, moving on to our last topic of today is security. All right. So security, and you can see here I got a lot because I believe I got Van Buren's somewhat, but I've got a lot of test users in here. The way that our Cogitate security works is you kind of think of it where we have a lot of, so let's just bring up user test because I like him. So we have a lot of the features and reports. So it's kind of split between a feature and a report. And the best way to explain it is, if you want to give someone access to a report or a feature, you should do that through a group. That gives them the privileges that they can use in pro fund accounting. And you can create new groups if you need to. But just remember, if we add new reports and new features, you may have to go back to your group and give permission to that group again for those new reports and that new feature. But let's go ahead and look at groups. And I've got kind of a group A here set up with a couple of options in payables. So group A has pay invoices fully provided, but payables post, the group A can only just view it on payables post. And then group B has payables where the pay invoices, people can only see it, but then the payables post, they can do it. So then we go back, and when we set the group for users, so when you go into users and you set groups in here. Okay, so right now this user has no, if I go to payables, they don't have any permissions at all. So if I give them group A, they have what we would consider group A's permissions, which were the full pay invoices and the payables post. And then if I give them group B, they end up having both, because the groups only can provide, you can't make a group take away somebody's rights. A group can only provide somebody's rights. So it's pretty, it's not too hard to kind of figure that out. Same goes with the reports. If we go to the payables reports, let me go back to the group and show you what the reports and the groups are. So in group A, the reports that we're permitting in payables is we are allowing check, AP check, and AP check register, excuse me, reports, and everything else is denied. And in group B, for reports, we are permitting AP laser checks. So group A had check register. Group B has AP laser checks. It looks like we also did AP prepay. So if we go back to the user tests, you will see that, let me just make sure I bring up, yep, they still have group A and group B. So when I look at what reports that Tess has access to, they have check information, check register, and laser checks. So like if your place doesn't really ever use that report, you really shouldn't have that available to everybody to pick from. So it doesn't, so like some of the stuff that if you're never using these reports, it's sometimes easier just to not have them in there as part of a group. So now the other side, of course, of groups is if we add a new report if we add a new payables report and you want them to have access to it, you'll need to come into their group settings that are set up with it and provide them the allow access. And yes, we do have the button at the top to allow all, of course. Now, it doesn't work. Reports, you cannot modify an individual's report. You can only modify it at the group level. So we go back to a group. You can go to group A. We can go to payables and reports and select all. Now all the reports are available in group A. And again, if you didn't want one of them, you can simply, remove it and nobody will be able to run that report. You can delete groups. You can rename them. A whole, groups are pretty open to be changeable. You can create many of them. Now in users, we did allow kind of what we would like you to understand as the exception. So let's go back to, we have our group A and group B sample with tests. And if I go into payables, I do have Tess does have access to pay invoices and payables post, but it says, let's, for instance, say, oh, she really shouldn't have post. She should just have pay. So I could do that. So even though she has whatever reports were provided in by group B, which is what provided her that payables post access from the group, we still said at the local, no, it's not, we're not going to allow it. So that's kind of how we can override a one particular person's. And the idea is you don't want to use this mode to set everybody's permissions. You really want to use the groups, because at a certain point when when you're adding a new report or a new feature to our software, it's easier to add it at the group level so that everybody who's supposed to have it gets it right away, and you don't have to go through 10 or 15 different people setting each individual option for them. Now, also in here, we have a couple of other features, but let me just stop for a minute. Is everybody clear on how groups function and how they provide you the information? Only, a group only gives it, and the only place you can take something away is down below at the bottom in the permissions for individual parts to our software. Now, one of the, why are keying the questions? One of the things that we did fix in the next update, which we're trying to get out today, is once, if in the past you changed somebody's, like I just did here, where I denied them the rights to payables post, there was no way, we kind of saved the fact that you denied them the right to it. There was no way to clear the fact that you denied them the right to it. So if you wanted to undeny them the right to it, we never got rid of that deny permission. So what you can do is what we changed is now those will get, when you click done, if the group setting and the effective setting are the same, we clear any permissions and denies that were specified individual. That was just a bug, and we didn't see that as we didn't come until I started digging into putting together the webinar and the video on this. I didn't realize that was an issue.
We don't use it enough to understand it completely.
Who was saying that?
Andrea.
Well, it can be important for some places, and other places, a lot of places will use the group all access, and we keep that up to date with, as we add stuff, we always update the all access group. So even if you were to change something in all access, the next time we make a change, we'll overwrite whatever you've changed in that group. But otherwise, all the rest of the groups are for you to set, play with, and modify. Now, the other options in this window, let me just cover those, is, of course, clear password. That'll take somebody's password and clear it from our system. So the next time that person tries to log in, they'll have to specify a new password. The Windows user ID and the search button are used when you have set up in the settings, use the Active Directory for logging in. So if you do have Active Directory set up and you don't want to have logins at all, you can specify a user to have this. And so when they start up Pro Fund Accounting, it'll go right past the login screen and just go right into the software without having to do a login, because it's getting its authentication from Windows Active Directory. But if you do happen to have a user, you can enforce the password policy. Again, that's set in the Windows settings, and I'll cover that in a minute. And then you can specify what kind of user type. If they're a standard user, then they will not be able to perform the database updates as we get them. As well as there's a couple of other options in the tools that they won't have access to. So you want to kind of have at least two people with administrative rights, so that in case if one person can't remember their password, another person can sign in and clear it. And then, of course, when you're done with the user or user is gone, you really should delete that user. So if we come in here to this GG, I don't know if we can delete it. Let's try to see if we can delete it. I don't think we can. I must not have had anything going. I think Donna has stuff going. Let's see if I can delete Donna. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I would say delete them if you don't need them. If you just want to make them inactive, you can go ahead and make something inactive, and then when you go to users, I believe you can activate users you've inactivated. And of course, you can create a new user. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, if you go to your settings, let's look at where the password policy comes into play. If you're an administrator, you can set up the system password policy in the system tab, and you can say how many characters must be put in a password and how many days do you want to reset that password. We keep track of the last two passwords, so if they want to change it, they have to pick something within the new. So if you don't want to, you can change what this is here for the password policy, and then when you go back to users, if you don't want a user to be part of the password policy at all, you can change that at the user setting. So for instance, like the one that I use here, the 1-1, I don't have enforced password policy because I just wanted, I'm logging in really fast to test. But, normally you would have something where you would be enforcing the password policy. So every XYZ amount of time, you have to log back in and change it. Any other questions? Oh, and we're going to be fixing this as well. If you right click in the window, you can browse and you can pick a picture. At the moment, this doesn't save correctly. So if I say done and I go back to tests, passwords, it's not there, but we're going to be fixing that so it will be there. That way, in case you have a lot of users, like some places do, it's sometimes hard to remember, when people have weird usernames to who they really are. And so if there's a picture, it can help. Just another feature. Okay. Is there anything else that people have a question about?
So is Paul just in marketing and sales, or will he be in support as well?
Paul will be in support at some point. He's just started the company. So obviously you could ask him about, how do I enter an account number? He'll be able to tell you how to enter one, but he won't be able to tell you what it means just yet. So he'll be in development as well as customer support, but you'll see him probably in about a year when he's more familiarized with the product, so he can actually, help you instead of not. And Paul is my other son, so it's starting to become a family business. All right, then I don't see, if there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Again, thank you for attending our webinar today, and we'll have another one next month. Everybody, you guys have all great day, and hopefully now that we're back from the holidays, we can all perk up and get to work.
You are now working smarter with ProFund Accounting. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.